You think Vanguard is some charity shelter? You think this company pays for your sick child's health insurance so you can stroll into work nearly an hour late?
Mr. Vance, I'm begging you. There was a rollover on the freeway. The car caught fire. I had to stop. Please don't take away my insurance. I need to get Leo a new asthma inhaler this afternoon.
So now you're using cheap drama and a traffic jam to excuse your laziness? Put Maya Ellison on a 30-day performance improvement plan. We cannot afford any more disruptions. One more minor mistake and she can pack her belongings and leave. Clear?
While this poor mother was being crushed, 6 blocks away in the penthouse suite of Phoenix General Hospital.
Do not tell me the police found nothing. Offer a $1 million reward. Buy every billboard you can. I don't care what it costs. Find the woman who owns this scarf.
A powerful billionaire was desperately searching for his savior, while the real hero was gritting her teeth through total humiliation just to keep her son breathing. That cruel boss had no idea that his decision to push this woman to the edge would soon bring the billionaire's fury crashing down on his head. Subscribe to Single Mom Billionaire Story to stay with us. Now to understand why this woman threw away the chance to change her life and turned away from a wall of fire. We have to go back to that morning on the I-10 freeway. Monday morning on I-10 in Phoenix, the pavement had already started giving off heat, even though it wasn't 9 yet. Maya Ellison was driving her old Honda Civic in the right lane, one hand on the steering wheel, the other gripping a cheap gas station coffee. She had tried to leave early. She really had. Leo had started coughing at 5:12, not the light kind of cough kids get when the seasons change. This was the kind of cough that pulled his little chest inward, made his eyes open in the dark, made his small hands search for the inhaler on the nightstand. Maya sat beside him for almost 40 minutes, counting every breath, waiting for the medicine to work. She had no room left to be late. Marcus Vance had made that very clear the week before. One more late arrival, just one, and she would be placed on corrective action. At Vanguard, everybody understood corrective action was just the polite way to clear a path toward a P, then termination. For other people, losing a job was a financial crisis. For Maya, losing her job meant Leo would lose the company health insurance. So when the black sedan ahead of her suddenly lost control, slammed into the median, and flipped onto its side with the sound of metal tearing apart, Maya didn't have time to think like a hero. She just hit the brakes. Cars behind her blasted their horns. The black sedan skidded a few more yards, spun halfway around, then stopped, white smoke rising from the front end. 1 second later, the smoke changed color. Fire began licking up from the engine compartment. Maya sat frozen behind the wheel. In her head, 2 voices spoke at the same time. One said, "Don't get involved, call 911, your son needs you." The other said, "Someone is inside." She saw the driver's hand hit weakly against the window. Maya called 911, shouted the location near the 7th Avenue exit, then threw the phone onto the seat. She ran out. Heat struck her face. The smell of gasoline and burning rubber tightened her throat. Several cars had stopped. People stood far back, holding up their phones, yelling that the car was going to explode. A man told her to get back. Maya heard him, but her feet kept running. The man inside the car was trapped, tilted toward the passenger seat. Blood ran from his forehead into his eye. The driver's side door was badly crushed. The handle was too hot to touch with bare skin. Maya pulled once, and heat shot straight through her palm, forcing her backward. She looked down at her neck. The blue silk scarf was the prettiest thing she had on that day. It wasn't expensive. But on the days when she had to sit under Marcus's stare, it helped her feel like she still had one small thing that belonged to herself. Maya pulled the scarf off, wrapped it around her right hand, then wrapped another layer around her left. The second time, she pulled harder. The hot metal hissed under the fabric. Her skin still felt like it was burning through every thread of silk. She clenched her teeth and pulled again. The door didn't open. The smoke thickened. The man inside rasped something she couldn't make out. A truck driver finally ran over with a small fire extinguisher. He sprayed the front of the car, not enough to put the fire out, but enough to give Maya a few more seconds. She braced her whole body, planted one foot against the crushed frame, and yanked the handle one last time. The door gave way, opening a narrow gap. She reached inside and unbuckled the man's seatbelt. He was much heavier than she was. Her shoulder was wedged between the steering wheel and the seat. Maya pulled, slipped, then pulled again. Her entire arm burned with pain. The scarf around her hand began to char at the edge. "Come on," she said. Please, I need you to help me a little. The man opened his eyes, gray eyes blurred by smoke and pain. He tried push with his leg. Maya pulled so hard it felt like her back was tearing. Finally, his body slid out of the seat and dropped onto the pavement. She hooked her arms under his armpits and dragged him backward inch by inch. Someone else ran in and helped pull. They had only moved a few steps when the rear section of the sedan exploded. Not the kind of explosion you see in movies. It was a violent blast, a hot pressure wave that knocked everyone down onto the road. Glass burst outward. Fire climbed high. Maya hit the pavement on one knee, her ears ringing, but the man beside her was still breathing. The ambulance siren began to echo from a distance. The man grabbed the edge of the blue scarf still wrapped around Maya's hand. His fingers were weak, but they held on tight, like a child gripping the first thing that proved he was still alive. He tried to speak. She leaned down. Only a few rough sounds came out. Maybe thank you, maybe his name, maybe nothing at all. Maya looked at the electronic freeway sign. 8:42. Her heart dropped. She was supposed to be at her desk at 8:30. Marcus had sent an email at 8:28. Where are you? No greeting. Just 3 cold words like a trap. If the police took her statement, if the paramedics made her stay, if Marcus saw her come in late for the 3rd time that month, everything could fall apart that very day. Leo needed a new controller inhaler by the weekend. Cobra was too expensive. Medicaid didn't process in a day. Those words ran through Maya's head faster than the ambulance siren. She looked at the man on the pavement. A paramedic had just reached him. Someone had placed a jacket under his head. He wasn't alone anymore. Maya gently tried to pull her hand away. The man didn't let go. Part of the scarf was caught between his fingers. She pulled harder. The fabric tore, leaving a scorched blue piece in his hand. I'm sorry, she said very softly, though she wasn't sure he could hear her. Then she ran back to her car. A police officer had just pulled onto the shoulder. He called out to her, but Maya had already opened the Civic's door. Her hands shook so badly the key scraped against the ignition twice before sliding in. Her palms hurt as if hundreds of hot needles were buried under the skin. She hid her hands in her lap and drove away from the scene in the slow lane, her heart pounding like it wanted to break through her ribs. She knew how terrible leaving looked, but in Maya Ellison's world, doing the right thing wasn't always safe to claim. Vanguard Insurance Group was housed in a beige office building in downtown Phoenix. Maya arrived at 9:10, 40 minutes late. She sat in the car for another 10 seconds, looking at her hands. The skin across her palms was bright red, several places already blistering. The edge of the blue scarf was gone. Her white blouse had a smear of black soot near the cuff. She grabbed a wet wipe from the car's glove box, cleaned up as quickly as she could, then pulled her sleeves down low. Her phone had 7 new emails, 3 from Marcus. She entered through the employee door and tried to keep her shoulders straight. Maya shoved both hands into the pockets of her thin coat. She watched the floor numbers light up and repeated one sentence in her head. Sit down, log in, work. Just get through today. But Marcus Vance was already waiting in the middle of data operations. He stood beside the row of cubicles, red tie on, tablet in hand. He didn't call her into a conference room. He chose to stand where everyone could hear. Maya, glad you finally decided to join us. The sound of typing slowed around them. A few co-workers didn't lift their heads, but Maya knew they were listening. I'm sorry I'm late. Her voice was hoarse from the smoke. There was an accident on I-10 and Marcus raised his hand to cut her off. I don't need another freeway story. Maya closed her mouth. This is the 3rd time this month you haven't been at your desk on time. Data analysis requires accuracy, consistency, accountability. If you can't meet the most basic standards, we have to ask whether this role is still a fit for you. Maya's throat went dry. She felt her palms burning inside her pockets, but she didn't dare move. Marcus opened his tablet. Effective today, you'll be placed on a 30-day performance improvement plan. Any error in attendance, processing speed, or data quality will be documented. At the end of that period, we'll evaluate your continued employment. PIP. Those 3 letters fell in front of Maya like a locked door. In an American office, a PIP is rarely a real chance. Sometimes it's just the paperwork before the company pushes you out. Maya knew that. Marcus knew it too. She wanted to say she had just pulled a man out of a burning car. Wanted to place both hands on the desk so he could see why she hadn't clocked in on time. But that would open other questions. Why did she leave the scene? Why didn't she go to the hospital? How badly were her hands injured? Would it affect productivity? Marcus only needed one more excuse. And Leo. Leo was always the final answer, so Maya only nodded. Marcus lowered his voice, but it was still loud enough. I suggest you start by sitting down and proving you still deserve a paycheck today. Maya walked back to her cubicle. She pulled the chair out with her elbow, logged into her computer, and placed her hands on the keyboard. Pain shot from her palms straight into her wrists. She bit the inside of her cheek so she wouldn't make a sound. She started typing. At Banner University Medical Center, Phoenix, Jonathan Pierce woke up in intensive care with a raw throat and one ear covered in bandages. The white light above him made his eyes ache. A monitor beeped steadily beside him. Memories returned out of order. An explosion. The smell of burning metal. Broken glass. Heat. Then a woman's voice very close to him, both firm and warm. "Come on, please." He turned his head and saw his personal assistant, Daniel Cho, spring up from the chair. Jonathan tried to speak, but his voice came out as a rasp. "The woman," Daniel bent closer. "Sir?" "The one who pulled me out." Daniel looked toward the police officer standing near the door. The officer stepped forward and said they still didn't know her identity. Witnesses said she was a woman of color, somewhere in her 30s, driving an older silver or blue-gray sedan. She left the scene before they could get her name. Jonathan closed his eyes. Because he could still feel her hands under his shoulders, still feel the fabric wrapped around her palms, still hear her breathing in the smoke. The officer added that she had left something behind. Daniel handed him a clear evidence bag. Inside was a piece of blue silk fabric, one edge scorched, still marked with black soot. Jonathan looked at it for a long time. His hand lifted slowly from the pain, but he still took the bag. He didn't know her name, didn't know where she went, didn't know why someone who had just saved his life had disappeared. But he knew one thing. She had dragged him out of that car while everyone else stood back. Jonathan turned to Daniel. "Cancel everything." Daniel blinked. "Sir, the board, call it 2 and cancel it all," Jonathan said. His voice was weak, but no one in the room misunderstood him. "Tear this city apart and find her for me." He gripped the piece of blue scarf in his hand, the burned edge resting beneath his thumb. Outside the ICU glass, Phoenix kept moving through its Monday morning, and in an 11th floor cubicle at Vanguard, the woman Jonathan Pierce was searching for bent her head toward a screen, typing one number after another with blistered hands, trying to keep the only job that could keep her son breathing through the summer. The 30 days after the accident on I-10 didn't begin with billboards or television news. For Maya Ellison, they began with a cheap roll of gauze she bought at CVS close to 10 o'clock at night. She stood in the small bathroom of her rented apartment in Maryvale, the door locked so Leo wouldn't see his mother's hands. The sink had a thin crack in the left corner. The ceiling light flickered slightly every time the old air conditioner in the living room kicked on. Maya placed both hands on a washcloth and looked at the head blisters across her palms, barely daring to breathe too hard. She had thought it would feel better after one night. It didn't. The skin where she had gripped the car door handle was still swollen. The edges of some blisters had started to sting every time she curled her fingers. She wasn't a doctor, but she knew she should go to urgent care. She also knew urgent care would ask what happened, would create a record, would come with a bill, maybe a prescription, maybe a recommendation to take time off work. And if Marcus Vance saw any paperwork saying she was injured, he would turn it into a question about her ability to do her job. The peep had started. 30 days. 30 days to prove she was a fit for the role. 30 days without being late, without making a data error, without giving Marcus one more line to put in her HR file. Maya didn't have an employment lawyer, didn't have an emergency fund, didn't have anyone splitting rent with her. She had a 7-year-old son with severe asthma and a health insurance plan tied directly to her Vanguard employee badge. She opened the cheap burn cream, spread it as thinly as she could, then wrapped gauze around each palm. The rough bandage rubbed against her skin. She bit her lip until the faint taste of blood touched her tongue. Outside the bathroom, Leo coughed once. Maya immediately pulled her sleeves down and opened the door. Leo stood in the hallway in dinosaur pajamas, hair messy, eyes still heavy with sleep. He asked if Mommy was hurt. Maya hid both hands behind her back. "I was just washing my face." Leo looked at her the way poor children learn to look too early. Not fully believing, but not forcing the adult to say it out loud. He nodded and went back to bed. Before lying down, he reached for the inhaler on his nightstand and pushed it closer to the edge, as if he wanted his mother to see it was still there. The next morning, Maya arrived at Vanguard 22 minutes early. She sat in the car for a while, breathing deeply. Her hands pulsed with pain inside thin cloth gloves. She had cut the fingertips off so she could type. From far away, it looked like an odd fashion choice. Up close, someone would see the white gauze showing beneath her sleeves. So Maya didn't let anyone look up close. In the office, Marcus passed her cubicle at 8:29. He didn't say hello. He only glanced at her screen, glanced at the clock, then kept walking. Maya opened the claims backlog data file and placed her hands on the keyboard. The first key made her want to pull back. Pain ran from her palm into her wrist, sharp and hot. She lowered her face so her hair covered half her cheek and began entering numbers. Every time she had to press the enter key firmly, the gauze scraped against the blisters. She loosened her shoulders, but her whole body stayed tight as wire. Her coworker in the next cubicle, Trina, asked if she was okay. Maya said she was fine, just a headache. Lying was easier than explaining. Explaining led to questions. Questions led to risk. While Maya tried to keep her job with every keystroke, Jonathan Pierce began using everything money could buy. On the third day after waking up, he was moved from the ICU to a private room. One side of his neck and the area behind his ear were still bandaged. His voice was hoarse from smoke inhalation, but his mind was clear. Daniel Cho placed the first report in front of him. Police still had not identified the woman. Traffic cameras had been blown out by glare and blocked by smoke, making the license plate unreadable. Witnesses remembered different things. Silver sedan, blue-gray sedan, maybe a Toyota, maybe a Honda. A woman of color, in her 30s, average height, wearing a light blouse with a blue scarf. Jonathan listened without interrupting. Then he told Daniel to hire private investigators, contact hospitals, and check urgent care clinics around the area to see whether anyone had come in that day with burns on their hands. Put out notices if necessary, but don't scare her. Daniel asked what don't scare her meant. Jonathan looked at the piece of blue scarf in the evidence bag on the table. It means don't treat her like a suspect because she disappeared. By day 7, Jonathan's face was on the local news. He sat in his hospital room, his shirt collar covering part of the bandage, his voice still rough. He said he was searching for the woman who had saved him from the burning car on I-10. He said she might have been injured. He said she had done nothing wrong if she left the scene because she panicked. He only wanted to know she was safe. By day 10, the first billboard went up near I-10. A simple blue background, big white letters, looking for the woman with the blue scarf. Underneath was a hotline number and the reward, 1,000 for verified information. Phoenix saw it before Maya dared to. People talked about it at gas stations, on the radio, and Facebook comments. Some called her a mystery angel. Some asked why she had run away. The internet always knows how to turn a real person into a subject before it knows their name. Maya saw the billboard for the first time while driving Leo home from the pharmacy. He sat in the back seat, holding the bag of medicine. Leo's rescue inhaler had gone up in price because the copay changed at the start of the year. Maya had paid with a credit card that was almost maxed out. She was calculating how much longer she could delay the electric bill when Leo pointed out the window. "Mommy, the blue scarf." Maya looked up. Her heart stopped for one beat. The giant billboard stood above the freeway ramp. There was no picture of her, but there was that blue. The blue of the scarf that was still somewhere with the man she had pulled from the fire. The blue of the thing she never imagined would become a clue to find her. Leo read the reward amount slowly. "Is $1 million a lot, Mommy?" Ma kept her eyes on the road. "A lot. Then why doesn't that lady call?" Leo's question struck her in the chest. Maya said maybe she was scared. Leo was quiet for a while. Then he said, if she saved somebody, she shouldn't be scared. Maya wanted to tell him that good people can still be scared. That America has plenty of ways to make a poor person afraid even after doing the right thing. But Leo was 7. He already had enough to worry about. Eyed his lungs. She only said, "I think so too." At Vanguard, the billboard became breakroom talk. One afternoon, the wall-mounted TV played a news story about Jonathan Pierce's campaign. The anchor said his team had received more than 4,000 calls, most of them false tips or people trying their luck. A clip showed Jonathan walking slowly out of the hospital, his high collar covering the burn injury, Daniel at his side. The text at the bottom of the screen repeated the $1 million reward. Maya stood in front of the vending machine, wallet in hand, staring at the hotline number on the screen. Her phone was in her pocket. She could call. She could say she was the woman. She could explain why she left. She could be verified by the wounds on her hands, by the color of her car, by the remaining piece of scarf. $1 million could pay rent, clear credit card debt, get Leo to better doctors. Her finger touched her phone. Right then, Marcus walked into the break room. He didn't look at the TV, he looked at Maya. In his hands was a thick stack of files clipped with 2 metal binder clips. He dropped it onto the table beside her. The slap of paper made her flinch. "Last quarter's claims reconciliation," he said. "I need it redone before 5. Every discrepancy under $20 gets flagged too. If you miss one number, Maya, you can clean out your desk tomorrow." Several people in the break room went quiet. No one defended her, not because they hated her, because in a toxic office, everyone knows they could be next. Maya looked at the stack of files, then she looked at the hotline number on the TV. Being one Leo's could take weeks to verify. Lawyers, police, questions, media. Leo's inhaler needed cash this afternoon. Her peep wasn't waiting for a billionaire's kindness. Marcus was standing right in front of her, holding the switch that could shut off her son's health insurance. Maya pulled her hand out of her pocket. She picked up the files with her forearms so her palms wouldn't touch the metal clips, then carried them back to her desk. By day 15, the blisters were starting to dry around the edges, but the new skin was painfully sensitive. She still typed slower than before. Marcus began documenting it. He sent an email with the subject line, "Productivity concern." No greeting, just a table comparing the number of files she processed to the team average. Maya wanted to reply that the team average didn't include anyone typing with burned hands. She deleted that sentence, rewrote it, "I'll improve my speed today." Marcus replied within 2 minutes, "I expect measurable improvement." On day 18, Leo tried to hide a coughing fit in the middle of the night. Maya was half asleep on the sofa with her laptop open beside her. She heard the blocked breath even though Leo had pressed his face into the pillow. She ran into his room, turned on the nightlight, and handed him the inhaler. Leo tried to say he didn't want Mommy to be tired. Maya sat on the edge of the bed. "Mommy can be tired, but you just need to breathe." The boy looked at her bandaged hands. This time, he didn't ask. He only placed his hand on her wrist, very lightly, avoiding the painful spots. The next morning, Maya came to work with red eyes. Marcus noticed. He asked if she was dealing with any personal issues affecting her performance. His voice was soft enough for HR to call it support, cold enough for Maya to understand that any answer could be used against her. She said no. Across the city, Jonathan wasn't sleeping well either. The search campaign grew bigger than he had expected. Billboards appeared on Loop 202, near Sky Harbor, on the way into downtown. The hotline had to hire more people to answer calls. People called claiming to be the savior but didn't know the details of the accident. People sent photos of blue scarves bought at the mall. People asked whether the reward could be paid up front. Daniel suggested narrowing the search and moving into a quieter investigation. Jonathan disagreed. "That woman may not know we're looking for her," he said. "Or she knows and thinks she'll be punished. I want her to see that we're not punishing her." But Maya had seen and she was still afraid. On day 23, the first PIP meeting took place in a small glass conference room. Marcus sat with an HR representative named Kelly. Kelly used phrases like supportive framework and documented expectations. Marcus slid a record of Maya's small failures across the table. Late arrival on the day of the accident, reduced data entry speed, 2 restroom breaks longer than the policy allowed, 1 missed flag in a claims report. Maya sat across from them, both hands in her lap. The gauze was hidden under her sleeves. She listened to every item. Each one was true in the way paperwork can be true and life can be wrong. Kelly asked if she needed any accommodations. Maya looked at Marcus. He looked back like someone waiting for prey to step into a trap. If she said her hands were injured, they would ask why she hadn't reported it. If she said she had saved someone, they would ask for proof. If she said she was afraid of losing her job, Marcus would hear her biggest weakness. She said, "No, I'll meet the requirements." Day 29 fell on a Thursday. Phoenix was dry hot from early morning. Maya had slept less than 4 hours because Leo had struggled to breathe, and the air purifier in his room had started making a strange noise. She came into the office with both hands swollen from days of trying to work, as if everything were normal. The gauze had shifted under her sleeves. Every time she typed, she felt the skin pull tight. That day's report was a risk adjustment file for a group of major corporate clients. Long numbers, many codes, many columns that looked almost the same. Maya was usually very good at that kind of work. She could see patterns, catch small discrepancies, and check data the way other people read maps. But that day on line 417, she typed 1 digit wrong. Not huge, not immediately damaging, but enough. Marcus found it at 4:38. He called her into the glass room. There was already a printed paper on the table. Maya saw the Vanguard logo in the top corner with the words employee separation notice underneath. Marcus didn't bother pretending to be sad. He smiled very slightly. like someone who had finally found the number he had been waiting for. I was clear about the expectations, Maya. And you didn't meet them. She looked at the paper. The sounds of the office outside blurred. The first thing she thought of was not rent, not embarrassment. Was Leo at home after school, the rescue inhaler in the drawer, and the insurance card in her wallet that might stop working after the end of the month. Marcus said that tomorrow at 10 a.m., after the company welcomed a VIP client for a major contract, she would clean out her desk and complete exit paperwork with HR. Maya asked which client, though she didn't know why she asked. Marcus straightened the edge of the paper. Pierce Logistics. The name passed through Maya's mind without connecting to the billboard, the hospital, or the piece of blue scarf. She was too tired to fit the pieces together. Marcus pushed the paper toward her but didn't let her take it. Not today. Tomorrow it would be official. Go home, he said, and try to be on time one last time. Maya stood. Her hands stayed hidden inside her sleeves. She walked past her row of cubicles without looking at anyone. Trina looked up as if she wanted to ask, then stayed silent. Outside the west-facing glass, a billboard glowed in the distance against the Phoenix evening sky. The white letters were still there. Woman with the blue scarf, please call. Maya didn't call. She only went down to the parking lot, sat in her old Civic, rested her forehead on the steering wheel, and tried to breathe slowly enough to get home before Leo saw her face. The next morning, Maya Ellison woke up in a plastic chair beside Leo's hospital bed. Phoenix Children's Hospital had stayed bright all night under white lights. The oxygen monitor clipped to Leo's finger gave off small, steady beeps, more even than when they had first come into the emergency room. Sat on his side, his mouth slightly open, his chest still rising with effort after the asthma attack at 2 in the morning. Maya sat still, one hand resting on the edge of his blanket, the other hidden inside her coat pocket. She didn't dare sleep deeply. Every time Leo's breathing caught, she woke right up. Around 4:30, the doctor said Leo could go home if his condition stayed stable for another hour. They increased his medication, reminded her to watch him closely for the next 24 hours, and gave her more instruction sheets. Maya nodded, listening to every sentence. It's like someone being told how to disarm a bomb. At the payment desk, her credit card was declined the first time. She tried again, declined a second time. The clerk looked at her with a face used to seeing that happen and asked if she had another card. Maya handed over the other one. It took longer to process, but finally went through, barely. When her phone alerted her that the credit balance was almost at the limit, Maya stood still for a few seconds, staring at the words on the screen like the last door was closing. Leo tugged on his mother's sleeve. "I'm sorry." Maya bent down and straightened his mask. "You don't have to apologize for needing to breathe." The boy didn't smile. He was too tired to smile. Before taking Leo to Mrs. Denise's apartment next door, Maya stopped at home for less than 15 minutes. The apartment was still dark. Last night's dishes were still in the sink, and Leo's backpack lay open on the chair. She settled him on the sofa, handed the medication instructions to Mrs. Denise, then went into her bedroom. On the floor beside the bed was a cardboard box she had taken from Vanguard's copy room the week before. Back that she had told herself it was only clear out a few old papers. This morning she knew she had lied to herself. Maya placed into the box a small framed photo of Leo at the science fair, a mug that said "Data people fix your mess," a few personal folders, a box of peppermint tea, and a spare pair of flats. She didn't take everything. There are things a person about to be fired doesn't want to carry out too, obviously. She left behind a few pens, a notebook, and a cheap glass paperweight, as if her desk still had a tomorrow. Her hands hurt more after the night at the hospital. The gauze had shifted. A few edges of the tape had come loose, revealing swollen red skin beneath. She removed it and changed the bandages quickly, but her fingers were stiff and clumsy. The burn cream was almost gone. She squeezed the last of it into her palm and let out a quiet hiss when it touched the sensitive skin. In the closet were 3 cheap blue silk scarves she had once bought in a bundle at a discount store. They were almost the same color as the scarf she had lost on I-10, but the fabric was stiffer, the stitching worse. She had bought them before all of this, just to add one small change to a dull office uniform. That morning she wrapped one around her neck and pulled the ends down to cover her cuffs and the bandages. It didn't cover the pain, but it covered the questions. Maya looked at herself in the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes, dry lips, a white blouse that had been washed but still held a faint trace of soot near one cuff, so faint only she could recognize it. She adjusted the scarf, breathed in, then turned off the light. Leo lay on the sofa, eyes half open. "You're going to work?" Maya nodded. "Will you come home early?" She didn't know how to answer. If Marcus did what he had said, she would be home early, with a box of belongings and health insurance about to run out. She placed a hand on her son's forehead. Maybe. Leo looked at the blue scarf around his mother's neck. "That looks like the one on the billboard." Maya froze for half a second, then pulled her coat higher. "Yeah, it's just the same color." The boy closed his eyes. "Drive careful, Mommy." That sentence almost made her turn back and hold him longer. But she had been late too many times. She only kissed Leo's hair, handed Mrs. Denise the medication list again, and left. At 9 in the morning, Vanguard Insurance Group looked the same as always, and that was exactly what made Maya feel out of place. The elevator still smelled like floor cleaner. People in the lobby still held iced coffees. The digital screen still ran slogans about trust, care, and protection. Those words passed through Maya's mind like a voice from another company. On the 11th floor, her desk sat at the end of the data operations row. She placed the cardboard box under the desk without pulling it out. Trina, in the cubicle beside hers, noticed it, and her face changed, but she didn't ask. That was a kind of office mercy. Sometimes not asking is the only way to let someone keep a little dignity. Maya logged in. Marcus didn't call her right away. He liked making people wait. 10 o'clock, after welcoming the VIP client, he had said, so she had almost an hour left to pretend she was still an employee. She opened the backlog file and tried to finish correcting a few lines. The gauze made the keys feel unfamiliar. Every touch reminded her that her body couldn't keep up with what the system demanded. She looked at Leo's photo on the second monitor, a boy smiling with one front tooth missing, holding a baking soda volcano model. She turned the second monitor off. Not because she didn't want to see him, but because if she kept looking, she wouldn't be able to type anymore. Downstairs in the lobby, Marcus Vance had changed into his best suit. He stood beside Vanguard's CEO, Richard Halden, a man who usually didn't know the names of employees in data operations, but knew very clearly what the Pierce Logistics contract was worth today. $50 million for a logistic insurance and multi-state risk coverage package. If they landed it, Vanguard would have its best quarter in 3 years. Marcus stood straighter than usual. At 7:50 that morning, he had sent an email to the entire team. Maintain professional appearance. Minimize non-essential movement in lobby and executive corridors. A VIP client was coming, and Marcus wanted the building to look clean, orderly, and free of anyone he would have to explain. Richard Halden asked if everything was ready. Marcus smiled. Absolutely. He didn't mention the employee waiting to be fired after the welcome was over. To Marcus, Maya was just one small item to handle after the important business was done. Someone late, slower than before, with a record no longer suited to the pace of the team. The paperwork was ready. HR had been notified. Security had been informed in case she reacted. The front glass doors opened. Jonathan Pierce walked in with the Pierce Logistics team. He was no longer in a wheelchair, but his steps were slower than a healthy man's. Behind his right ear, a faint scar ran down his neck, not fully hidden by his shirt collar. The skin there was still pink and pulled slightly whenever he turned his head. His face was calm, but anyone who looked closely could see the accident had not left his body yet. Daniel Cho walked beside him, carrying a tablet and a folder of documents. 2 lawyers followed. A risk department lead from Pierce Logistics came with them, eyes scanning every corner of the lobby. They were not there for social warmth. They were there to evaluate a company that wanted to insure the trucks, warehouses, and people of a major operation. Richard Halden stepped forward and shook Jonathan's hand with both of his voice so warm it was almost too much. Marcus stood beside him, his smile humble enough without losing rank. He said Vanguard was honored, said their team had prepared thoroughly, said the executive conference room on the 16th floor was ready. Jonathan nodded politely. He listened, but his eyes moved across the lobby with a habit that had formed after the accident. Since waking up, he had looked at crowds differently. He searched for blue, searched for a voice, searched for a woman who had disappeared into Phoenix as if the city had swallowed her whole. Over the past 30 days, he had met dozens of people claiming to be his rescuer. None of them were right. Some knew about the explosion but didn't know the sentence she had said. Some brought brand new blue scarves. Some wanted the money up front. Jonathan didn't stay angry at them for long. $1 million can make people do many things. But every wrong person made the burned piece of scarf in his pocket feel heavier. That morning, he still carried it in his breast pocket. Up on the 11th floor, Maya's desk phone rang at exactly 9:56. Marcus's voice was clipped. "Come down to the lobby. Bring your things. We're not doing this on the floor." Maya held the receiver for a few seconds after the call ended. Not doing this on the floor. That meant he didn't want coworkers watching for too long. Or he wanted her taken out through the back. With Marcus, on even firing someone had to be staged cleanly. Trina stood when she saw Maya pull out the box. "Maya," she said softly. Maya shook her head just a little. "Don't." Trina went quiet. Then she opened her drawer, took out a small pack of tissues, and placed it on top of the box. She didn't say anything else. Maya wanted to thank her, but her throat was too tight. She only nodded. The elevator went down slowly. Maya held the cardboard box against her chest, letting the edge hide her hands. The cheap blue scarf lifted slightly in the air conditioning. She watched the numbers fall, 10, 9, 8. Each number carried her closer to a life without health insurance. First floor. The doors opened. The lobby was more crowded than usual. A group of people in suits stood near reception. Marcus saw her immediately, and his face darkened as if she had deliberately chosen this exact moment to stain his picture. Maya hadn't even stepped fully out before Marcus came toward her. His voice was low but sharp. "I told you to use the rear employee exit." She held the box tighter. "You told me to come down to the lobby. Don't argue. Not today." He signaled to a nearby security guard. "Take her out through the back," quietly. The young guard probably knew, looked at Maya, then at Marcus. He didn't want to touch her, but his badge was paid for by this building. He stepped forward and told her to follow him. Maya turned. She only wanted to get out before her tears betrayed her. She lowered her head, held the box, and started toward the side hallway. At that exact moment, Jonathan's group began moving toward the executive elevator. Maya didn't look at them. She only saw polished shoes, expensive pant legs, heard quiet voices talking about the conference room and documents. She stepped left to get out of the way. The guard stepped right. Marcus stood behind her, irritated. That wasn't as clean as he wanted. One person in the group stopped suddenly. The people behind him stopped too. Daniel said something softly. Maya startled and stepped back half a pace, and the cardboard box hit the edge of the reception desk. Everything fell. The mug rolled across the stone floor and broke its handle. Leo's framed photo slid out and landed face down. The tea box burst open, scattering tea bags. A few personal papers spread beneath the shoes of the people in suits. Maya dropped to her knees immediately. Her knees struck the floor hard enough to send pain through them. She didn't have time to think. She only bent down to pick things up, and both injured hands slipped out from her sleeves as she reached for the photo frame. The gauze had shifted, but she pulled her hands back too quickly for anyone to look closely. "I'm sorry, sir," she stammered, eyes still on the floor. "I'm leaving right now." Her voice was hoarse from lack of sleep, from the smoke still stuck in memory, from 30 days of biting down and making no sound. Jonathan Pierce had been walking past when he stopped. No one in his group understood at first. Marcus understood in his own way and rushed forward. "Mr. Pierce, I sincerely apologize. This is just a small personnel matter. She's no longer with the department." Jonathan raised one hand, not sharply, not angrily. Just one small movement, enough to make Marcus shut his mouth. Maya was still on her knees, picking up tea bags with stiff fingers. The cheap blue silk scarf around her neck slipped off one shoulder and lifted slightly in the draft from the front doors. Jonathan looked at the scarf, then at her hands. Then he heard the voice inside his head again. "Come on, please. I need you to help me a little." The Vanguard lobby slowly went quiet. Richard Halden looked at Jonathan, then at Marcus, not yet understanding why the most important client of the decade had frozen in front of an employee being removed through the back. Maya picked up Leo's framed photo and held it to her chest with the papers. She still didn't dare look up. "I'm sorry," she said again. "I'll go right now." Jonathan didn't move forward. He slowly reached into the breast pocket of his suit, where the scorched piece of blue silk still sat inside a small folded evidence bag. And for the first time after 30 days of searching all over Phoenix, the man who had once lain in fire heard that same voice right in front of him. The first-floor lobby of Vanguard Insurance Group became so quiet that Maya Ellison could hear a tea bag fall out of her cardboard box. She was still kneeling on the cold stone floor, one arm holding Leo's framed photo, the other hurriedly gathering the printed papers scattered around her feet. In front of her were expensive shoes, sharply pressed pant legs, and men standing in the middle of a $50 million client welcome. She only wanted to disappear before Marcus could find one more reason to say she had embarrassed the entire company. But Jonathan Pierce did not step past her. He stayed where he was, one hand inside the breast pocket of his suit. Daniel Cho looked at him, then at Maya. The two Pierce Logistics bodyguards stopped too. Richard Halden, Vanguard's CEO, was still trying to understand what was happening. Marcus Vance rushed half a step forward, placing himself between Maya and the visiting group, lowering his voice, keeping it loud enough for nearby people to hear. "Mr. Pierce, I sincerely apologize. This is just a lazy employee we've terminated. She's being escorted out." Maya lowered her head even more. The word lazy moved through her like a slap she had gotten used to. She thought of Leo on Mrs. Denise's sofa, thought of the emergency room that morning, thought of her hands still burning under the cheap gauze. She wanted to say she wasn't lazy. But when someone with built-in power calls you a problem, every explanation starts to sound like begging. Jonathan did not look at Marcus. He stepped around him. Bodyguard instinctively moved a hand out, but Jonathan brushed it aside. Not hard, not angry. Just the motion of a man who had already made a decision and did not want to be protected from the truth. He knelt in front of Maya. The entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. Maya lifted her face a little. She saw the man in front of her. The faint scar behind his ear, the pink skin pulling down along his neck, the gray eyes looking at her not like an employee being fired, but like a memory that had just walked out of smoke. She didn't recognize him immediately. On the freeway that day, his face had been covered in blood and soot. She remembered only the weight of his body, the burning car door handle, and the sound of the gas tank bursting behind her. Jonathan spoke very softly. "You said, 'I need you to help me a little.'" Maya froze. No one at Vanguard knew that sentence. It was what she had said while trying to pull him from the burning sedan, almost swallowed by the sound of the fire. Marcus tried to cut in. "Mr. Pierce, I think there's been a misunderstanding. This woman..." Jonathan lifted his eyes. One look was all it took for Marcus to close his mouth. He turned back to Maya, his voice lower. "May I see your hands?" Maya pulled them back by instinct. For 30 days, she had learned to hide her hands as if they were proof of wrongdoing. In that office, pain was not a reason to be helped. It was a weakness to be documented. Jonathan did not reach for her. He waited. Maya looked around. Trina stood beside the elevator with one hand over her mouth. A few data operations employees had come down to see what was happening. Richard looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at the floor. The whole building, which only minutes earlier had treated her like someone who needed to be removed through the back, was now looking at her hands as if they might change the entire story. At last, Maya held out her hand. Jonathan took her wrist very gently, as if 1 ounce too much pressure might hurt her. The gauze underneath had shifted, the bandage wrapped in a hurry, some parts damp and discolored. The skin around her palm was swollen red, the healing blisters uneven. Across the center of her palm, a dark curved mark matched the shape of a metal car door handle. There were long scratches on her wrist too, like marks from being dragged across a crushed door frame. No one said anything. The air in the lobby changed. The people who had heard Marcus call her lazy were now seeing what she had hidden under a keyboard for 30 days. These were not the hands of someone avoiding work. These were the hands of someone who had grabbed burning metal to pull a stranger out of fire, then still come to the office because she was afraid of losing her son's insurance. Jonathan took a small evidence bag from the breast pocket of his suit. Inside was the scorched piece of blue silk, the edge shriveled from heat. Opened the bag and placed the fabric on the inside flap of Maya's cardboard box, right beside the end of the cheap blue scarf sliding across her neck. The scarf Maya wore now was cheaper, the fabric stiffer, but the shade of blue and the burned edge in the evidence bag made Jonathan's memory lock into place. Jonathan stood slowly. In that moment, the power in the lobby changed hands, and all it took was the truth resting on the hands of a single mother. Richard stepped forward, his face shifting from confusion to panic. "Mr. Pierce, if this is the woman you've been looking for, Vanguard will, of course." Jonathan turned to him. "Of course what?" Richard stopped. But Jonathan held the blue fabric in his hand. "For 30 days, he said. "I have put billboards all over Phoenix looking for the person who saved my life. I've received thousands of calls. And all this time, she was sitting here, inside your company, being put on a PIP because she was late the morning. She pulled me out of a burning car." Marcus found his voice again, but it was no longer steady. "With all due respect, sir, we had no knowledge of any of that. Miss Ellison has documented attendance issues and reduced productivity because her hands were burned," Jonathan said. Marcus swallowed. If she had a medical issue, she was required to report it through the proper channels. The company can't manage personal matters that aren't disclosed. Maya closed her eyes. Even now, Marcus had found a policy to stand on. Jonathan looked at him for a long time. "You pushed an employee to the edge because she was typing slowly? or because her hands were carrying severe injuries from dragging me away from death? The sentence carried across the lobby. Employees heard it, reception heard it, security heard it, the CEO heard it, and Marcus heard it most clearly. Richard immediately turned to Marcus. Is it true she's terminated today? Marcus's face tightened. Based on documented performance and attendance? Yes. The process has been handled through HR. Richard cut him off. Did you know she was injured? No, Marcus said. Then after a beat, he added, she didn't report it. Maya opened her eyes. For the first time, she did not speak to apologize. I didn't report it because you would used it against me. Marcus snapped his head toward her. Watch what you say. Jonathan took one step toward Marcus. No bodyguards, no threats. Just a man who had once lain in smoke, standing in front of the person who had crushed his rescuer with paperwork. No, Jonathan said. Today you need to watch what you say. Daniel placed the contract on the reception desk at Jonathan's request. It was thick, black-covered, marked with colored tabs. $50 million for the largest insurance package Vanguard could sign that year. Jonathan placed his hand on the cover. I came here today because my team said Vanguard had the capacity to handle risk coverage for Pierce Logistics. We evaluate companies by how they handle risk, not just risk on paper, human risk. He opened to the final signature page, looked at it for 1 second, then tore it. The sound of paper ripping seemed louder in the lobby than it should have been. Richard went pale. Marcus stepped back half a pace. Daniel did not stop him. The Pierce Logistics lawyers stayed silent because the decision had been made before law had time to interrupt it. Jonathan tore it once more, then dropped the pieces onto the desk. I will not sign anything with a company that tolerates this garbage. Marcus's face reddened. This is a serious misunderstanding. I was protecting the company from an underperforming employee, and Richard turned on him. Enough. Marcus looked at his CEO as if it had never occurred to him that the man might choose a data analyst over the VP of operations. But Richard wasn't choosing Maya out of kindness. He was looking at a $50 million contract torn in front of him, a billionaire with a massive media network standing in the lobby, and employees gathering around. He saw legal risk, PR risk, board risk, and he saw Marcus as the ignition point. Richard's voice went hard. Marcus Vance, you are suspended immediately, pending an internal investigation into misuse of the PIP process, retaliatory conduct, and mishandling of an injured employee. Jonathan did not look away from him. Richard looked toward Vanguard's legal counsel, who stood frozen near the edge of the lobby. Collect his badge. Lock his system access. HR will process termination documentation today if the allegations are verified. Marcus gave a short laugh of disbelief. Are you serious? Over one employee with attendance over an angry client? I kept this place running for 6 years. Richard's voice went colder. You just cost us the largest contract of the decade. Marcus turned toward Jonathan. You don't understand. He pointed at Maya. People like her always have a story. Sick kid, broken car, freeway, hospital. If we let every employee use their personal life as an excuse, nobody has accountability anymore. This time, the people in the lobby reacted. Not shouting, just a wave of sharp breaths, a few low murmurs, one chair scraping slightly out of place. Everyone had heard some version of that sentence before, just not in front of a billionaire and the CEO. Jonathan walked closer to Marcus, close enough that Marcus had to look up at the scar behind his ear. People like her, Jonathan said, are the reason I'm alive to stand here and listen to you destroy yourself. Security moved in. This time, they did not move toward Maya. One guard asked Marcus for his badge. Marcus jerked backward. He said he would sue. He would call his lawyer. He would take this to the board. Richard told him he had every right to do that after leaving company property. Legal counsel gave one very small nod and had already begun taking notes. Marcus's badge was taken from him in the same lobby he had once used to humiliate Maya. The plastic card came free from the lanyard around his neck with a small click. To Marcus, that was the sound of power being pulled out of his body. He did not leave quietly. He pointed at Maya, called her a fraud, said she had staged the whole thing, said they would all regret it. Security held both his arms, not darkly but firmly. He struggled, knocking his tie crooked from his collar. The same people who had avoided his eyes for years now stood watching as he was pulled toward the glass doors. Maya did not feel as happy as she imagined a person would feel when the man who had made her suffer was dragged away. She only felt stunned. Her cardboard box was still open on the floor. Leo's framed photo was in her hands. Her hands hurt, her throat was tight. 30 days of enduring did not disappear in 1 minute. They were still there in her shoulders, in the way she stood slightly folded inward, in the fear that the insurance card might stop working, even though Marcus had been dragged out the door. Jonathan moved first. He bent down, picked up the mug with the broken handle, and placed it in the box.
Daniel
Picked up the papers. Trina hurried over to gather the tea bags, tears still on her face. Richard Halden stepped forward, trying to recover his CEO voice. "Mrs. Ellison, we will rescind the termination decision. You'll be placed on paid medical leave immediately, Vanguard will." Maya looked at him, not angry, just too tired. "You already gave me the paper." Richard fell silent, because he understood. Sometimes the repair comes after trust has already been cut at the root. Jonathan stood beside Maya. He did not speak for her, did not claim the right to save her again. He only waited, giving her room to breathe. Maya turned toward him, finally putting the whole truth together. "You're the man from the car." Jonathan gave a very small smile. "Yes, I left," she said. "I shouldn't have left." He shook his head. "You pulled me out. I won't use the rest to judge you." That sentence made Maya's eyes sting more than any praise could have. Because for 30 days she had judged herself enough. Jonathan looked at her hands. "First thing is a doctor. After that, Leo, if you want. Daniel can arrange a car, but only if you agree." At the sound of her son's name, Maya held the photo tighter. Leo was not a part of her life she wanted the whole lobby to hear about. But Jonathan had seen the photo. He understood just enough not to ask more. Richard quickly stepped in, saying Vanguard would cover all medical costs related to the injury, would handle any retroactive workplace accommodation if needed, would open an investigation into Marcus. Those statements might be true, they might be necessary, but they no longer reached Maya the way they should have if they had been said 30 days earlier. Jonathan turned to her, his voice gentler. "Good morning, my rescuer. I think we need to talk about a new job for you." Maya looked at him. The sentence was too large for the moment she was standing in. A new job. A doctor. Leo. Marcus dragged out the door. The $50 million contract lying torn on the reception desk. The whole lobby still looking at her as if she had become someone else, when she was still just Maya, the mother who had spent the night in the ER and come to the office to be fired. She didn't answer right away. Jonathan didn't push. Outside the glass doors, Marcus was still shouting something on the Phoenix sidewalk before security moved him away from the entrance. Inside, Maud looked at the cheap blue scarf around her neck, then at the scorched silk in Jonathan's hand. For the past 30 days, she thought she had lost that scarf in the fire. Now it had come back, carrying a door she didn't yet know if she was brave enough to walk through. 2 hours after Marcus Vance was pulled out of the Vanguard lobby, Maya Ellison sat inside the burn clinic at Banner Health, both hands resting on a sterile towel. She was still wearing the white blouse from that morning, the cheap blue scarf sitting crooked around her collar. Her cardboard box was under the chair, holding Leo's framed photo, the mug with the broken handle, a few personal folders, and a box of peppermint tea that had spilled open. Jonathan Pierce sat 2 chairs away from her, not interrupting, not giving orders to the doctor, not treating her silence like an empty space he had the right to fill. Daniel Cho handled the paperwork, not because Maya couldn't do it herself, but because her whole body had survived the past 30 days on borrowed endurance. Only after she sat down did she realize how tired she was. The doctor removed the old gauze very slowly. Maya turned her face away, not because she was afraid of blood, but because she felt ashamed of her own hands. For 30 days, she had used them to type data, mix Leo's medicine, drive, do laundry, sign a PEEP, and hold her son in the ER. Now under the clinic lights, those hands were being treated like a real injury, not a performance problem. The doctor said she needed proper burn care, topical antibiotics, specialized dressings, a break from typing for a while, and follow-up visits. When Maya heard the word break, her whole body tightened. Jonathan noticed, but he didn't speak right away. He waited until the doctor left. When the door closed, Maya said she couldn't take much time off. Her voice was small, as if Marcus were still standing somewhere behind her. Jonathan didn't tell her to calm down. He also didn't tell her not to worry, because rich people can say that too easily. But he only asked where Leo was. Maya looked at him. Her son's name softened something in her defenses. She said Leo was with the neighbor, that he had just been discharged from the hospital the night before, and that she needed to get home to check his medication. Jonathan nodded. "Then we do the first thing first. We take you home to your son. After that, you decide the rest." He used the words "you decide," and Maya heard them clearly. That afternoon, Jonathan's car didn't take Maya to a hotel or a law office. It took her back to her small apartment in Maryvale. Mrs. Denise opened the door, still holding the medication list. Leo ran out before the adults could stop him. He froze when he saw his mother's hands, freshly bandaged, thicker than before, whiter than before. "You went to the doctor?" Maya knelt in front of him, even though her knees hurt. "I did." Leo looked at her closely. "You're not lying this time?" That small question hurt Maya more than when the doctor had removed the gauze. She pulled her son close with both arms, careful not to let her hands press hard against his back. "No, I'm not lying this time." Jonathan stood in the hallway and did not step inside until Maya invited him. I saw the apartment, the asthma inhaler on the table, the old air purifier taped along one side, the medical bills pinned under a refrigerator magnet. He didn't stare too long at any of it. There's a way rich people can look that turns a poor person's home into evidence, and he was careful not to do that. He only said hello to Leo. The boy looked at the scar behind Jonathan's ear. "You're the man from the burning car, right?" Jonathan nodded. "I am. Mom pulled you out?" "Yes." Leo turned to his mother. "I knew you were a good person." Maya closed her eyes for 1 second. For 30 days, she had been afraid the whole city would know she had run away. But in that small living room, the first thing her son held onto wasn't that she had left. It was that she had pulled someone out of the fire. Vanguard called several times over the next week. Richard Halden left messages asking to meet. HR sent an email confirming the PIP was canceled, her employee status was restored, and the company was offering paid medical leave and a compensation review. An employment lawyer Jonathan introduced explained everything to Maya in plain language. She didn't have to sign anything quickly, didn't have to accept an apology just to make them feel better, and didn't have to go back to work if she didn't want to. Maya accepted the paid leave because she had earned it with her own body. But she didn't return to Vanguard. Not because she was afraid. Because for the first time in years, she realized a paycheck wasn't worth the feeling of walking through a door every morning already apologizing because her life was too complicated. 2 weeks later, Jonathan invited her to the Pierce Foundation office, not the blue glass Pierce Logistics headquarters downtown. The foundation was in a lower building near Roosevelt Row, with bright meeting rooms and walls lined with photos from mobile health programs, temporary housing projects, and scholarships for children with chronic illnesses. Maya walked in with her hands still lightly bandaged, wearing a pale blue shirt, the cheap blue scarf folded inside her purse. Jonathan didn't begin by thanking her again. He had said enough. This time, he placed a job description in front of her, Director of Risk Analysis. Maya read the title, then looked up. "I don't do charity." "I know," Jonathan said. "You do data," he explained. The Pierce Foundation managed hundreds of grants for community clinics, medication assistance programs, and temporary housing for families with children receiving long-term treatment. Their problem was not a lack of good intentions. Their problem was that money could go to the wrong place, data could be misread, and the families who needed help most could be denied because one line in a file didn't match. They needed someone who could see risk before it became real damage. Maya looked at the job description. The salary was higher than Vanguard's. Health insurance started on day one. The schedule was flexible for parents with chronically ill children. No one promised her life would be easy, but on paper, for the first time, the system had not been designed like a trap. She said she didn't have experience managing a foundation. Jonathan said she had lived with risk every day for 7 years as a single mother. She knew one small error could turn into an unpaid bill. She knew policy could help people and it could crush people. The rest she could learn. Maya didn't accept right away. She went home, sat with Leo at the kitchen table, and read every page again. Leo was doing his science homework, the nebulizer sitting beside him. He asked if the new job would make Mommy be late. Maya laughed for the first time in days. "No, the new job asks what kind of schedule Mommy needs." Leo thought about it, then said, "Then they're smarter than your old job." Maya signed 3 days later. On her first day at the Pierce Foundation, no one stood in the middle of the office, waiting to see whether she arrived on time. The HR manager gave her an employee badge, talked about benefits, and asked whether she needed an ergonomic keyboard for her hands. That question made Maya look down at the desk for a few seconds. At Vanguard, her hands had been the reason Marcus pushed her out. Here, they were something the company needed to accommodate so she could work well. Leo changed too, but slowly. Jonathan connected Maya with a pediatric respiratory team at Phoenix Children's and a long-term care support program the Pierce Foundation had funded for years. Maya didn't like the feeling of receiving special treatment. The doctor told her plainly, this was not special treatment, this was care coordination. Leo had a chronic condition. He needed the right plan, the right medication, the right environment, and a mother who didn't have to choose between a copay and groceries. For the first time, Leo received a full evaluation from a specialist who wasn't rushing to check the clock. They adjusted his controller medication, replaced the air purifier in his bedroom, helped the school create an asthma action plan, and gave Maya an after-hours number that was not an endless phone menu. 1 month later, Leo coughed in the middle of the night. Maya woke instantly, like always, but this time, Leo didn't press his face into the pillow to hide it. He sat up, reached for his inhaler, and called for her. "Mommy, I need my medicine." Maya stood in his doorway with one hand on the frame. That sentence alone was enough to make her blink several times. Her son was no longer trying to protect her from fear by hiding the fact that he couldn't breathe. At Vanguard, the internal investigation expanded further than Richard Halden wanted. When HR opened the PIP files under Marcus over the past 3 years, the pattern became very clear. Employees with young children, employees caring for sick relatives, employees with complicated medical schedules, employees in the head of the department had been placed on corrective action at a much higher rate, enough for legal to require an external review, report to the board, and sign compensation agreements with several former employees. Marcus did not disappear overnight. He sent his resume to multiple insurance companies in Arizona. One recruiter he used to be friendly with scheduled a call, then canceled. A VP in Tempe said the role had already been filled, even though the job posting stayed open for 3 more weeks. No one sent Marcus an email with the word blacklist in it. Real life is not that clean. But inside Arizona's corporate insurance world, his name became something people said more quietly than before. Maya heard about it from Trina one Friday evening. Trina said Marcus might be looking for work in Nevada. Maya was folding Leo's shirts. She listened, stayed quiet for a moment, then said she hoped he learned something. Trina laughed. "You're still too kind." Maya looked at her hands. The scars had faded, but they were not gone. "No, I just don't want to carry him around any longer." 6 months after the accident, the Pierce Foundation announced a new program, the Blue Scarf Emergency Relief Fund. Maya's face was not on the banner. She had asked for it that way. The fund would provide rapid support for workers with chronically ill children when they fell into the gap between paycheck, insurance, and emergency bills. Not huge grants. Just money for medicine, co-pays, motel nights near the hospital, and the kind of help that means a parent doesn't have to choose between getting to work on time and taking a child to the ER. Jonathan kept his remarks short. He did not retell the accident in detail. He only said there are people who save someone's life and then return to the office to be asked why they were late. This fund was created for people who are already fighting before they ever walk through the door at work. Maya stood at the back of the room beside Leo. He wore a new button-down shirt, breathing evenly, holding a bottle of water in both hands. When people applauded, Leo tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Is this fund like you?" Maya looked at the words "blue scarf" on the sign. Then she looked at Jonathan standing at the microphone, the scar behind his ear faint under the lights. "No," she said. "This fund is for people like a lot of people." Leo nodded as if he understood, even though maybe he didn't understand all of it yet. Then he asked if there would be pizza afterward. Maya laughed. Yes, any decent announcement should have pizza. 1 year later, Maya still kept the cheap blue scarf in her desk drawer at the Pierce Foundation. Not the real burned one. The burned piece was framed in Jonathan's home beside one simple line. She stopped. Maya didn't need to look at it every day. But sometimes, when a relief application got stuck because it was missing one line of verification, she opened the drawer, looked at the blue, and made a phone call instead of sending another cold email. She knew that behind every form missing a signature, there might be a child struggling to breathe, a mother hiding painful hands, a father sitting in a parking lot, calculating whether he had enough gas to get home. She did not become perfect. There were still days when she snapped at Leo because he had left his homework until the last minute. There were still nights when she woke at 3 in the morning to check the sound of his breathing, even though the doctor said he was doing better. Trauma does not disappear just because the paycheck improves. But it no longer drove her entire life. And when Leo coughed, he called for his mother. To Maya, that was worth more than any new title. But now let me step outside the story for a moment. The thing that haunts me most about Maya isn't only that she ran into the fire. A lot of people in a life-over-death moment can do something brave that even they don't fully understand. What haunts me is the 30 days after. The 30 days she sat in a cold office, typing numbers with hurting hands, listening to a manager call her irresponsible. while no one asked what she had already fought through before she ever walked in the door. And that is very real. At work, people usually see the final result. You were late, you typed slowly, you asked for time off, but you didn't smile in the meeting. You made one small mistake. Then someone with a title, a badge, and the authority to write in your file turns your whole life into one sentence. Unstable, unprofessional, underperforming. But they don't see where the morning began. They don't see the child struggling to breathe at 5 a.m. They don't see the credit card declined at the hospital desk. They don't see the old car refusing to start. They don't see the bandaged hands hidden in a coat pocket. They don't see a mother sitting in a parking lot, telling herself not to cry because runny mascara will make the office ask questions. Marcus Vance was cruel not because he shouted the loudest. He was cruel because he believed he had the right not to know. To him, every personal hardship was just an excuse. Every pain not reported on the proper form did not exist. And that is a very dangerous kind of cruelty, because it can wear a nice shirt, sit in a glass office, and use words like accountability, performance, and policy. Of course, companies need processes. Workplaces need standards. No one denies that. But standards should not turn people into machines. Accountability should not only fall on the people with the least power, and a pip should not become a whip used to push someone out of health insurance while she is trying to keep her child alive and well. Jonathan Pierce did not save Maya with the $1 million reward. What truly saved her was that he saw her value correctly. He saw a person who could carry unbearable pressure and still do the right thing. A person who could be afraid without being heartless. A person the whole system had called late, while she was the one who had moved fastest when a stranger needed saving. I think there are a lot of people in real life waiting to be seen that way. No pity for, no charity deal. I've just seen more than one little error in their file. I want you to know this. Your story doesn't start when you were late, if you have ever been misjudged at work because of the struggles you were hiding. It starts with all the things you survived to get through that door. And if you're in a position to manage someone else, perhaps this story is a simple reminder. Before you turn a human being into a line in a report, ask one kind question. Sometimes the truth is staring you in the face, covered only by a scarf or a sleeve or a smile too weary to carry. Have you ever been misjudged at work due to problems you needed to keep under wraps? If you think good people will one day be recognized for what they're really worth, leave a comment saying nice. And don't forget to subscribe to Billionaire Single Mom so you can follow along with us for the next stories.